Now, your story, Bob, is unbelievable. As a mafia capo that actually lived to tell the tale. Your father, your brother, and your cousin who were assassinated in a famous mob here. They are not here to live the tale, as many, many others are. This is a fascinating expose into the Boston, Philadelphia, Bruno Scarfo family, certainly. It's wonderful to have you here.
I'll tell you, it's great to be here, Stephen.
Now, in part one, we talked a lot about your life, and we went really, really deep. We went to the underpinning of you growing up, your father, the instruction and the role models you had, and you told us an unbelievable dark journey of death, of what it was like for you to lose so many guys and to progress in that life. Now, you was a very senior made member, capo, captain in the family. What was the ceremony actually like?
I'll tell you, it was a good ceremony. There was probably more than a dozen guys in the room, and they sit you down first. And 2 of us got made on the day that I got made. They sit you down first and tell you the rules. The boss tells you all the rules, and then we took different turns. My friend Mike went first, then I went second, and it's a blood oath. They prick your finger. You know, they burn the saint in your hand. We went through all that, and you say your oath. And they ask you with this gun and knife, would you kill everybody or kill anybody for this family? I said, absolutely. So they asked you that at the ceremony. And then after the ceremony, it was nice. And then after that, we went out drinking and partying. Now, a lot of things that you see about the ceremony, they did a nice one on The Sopranos. So if people watch that, when they made Christopher that time, we didn't do it in a cellar. We did it in a nice place. But, you know, the way things are today, people are going into cellars and back rooms and being really careful with this, the way they're doing that. But, yeah, the meeting was something, you know, you felt good. You belong to something now. I was looking forward to that. And then after that, I got made. There was just a short time before they actually officially made me a capo. And then we started straightening out all my guys in Boston.
Now, you know, I've interviewed some Sicilian, really high-ranking Sicilian mafia guys in the Stephen Gillen crime files. And they're the land of the mafia, transported over to the US, which is a modern-day mafia, which you as a made member of. The ceremony is slightly different there, Bob, right?
Yes,
the rules are slightly different over there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So the ceremony, you know, in this country, it was kind of made back in the old days because of the life in the US. Is this correct? Different to what the life in Italy was?
Well, here, you know, when the Black Hand came over in the 1800s, the Sicilians came over. They had all their certain traditions. By the time of Luciano, you know, that's when we really consider this La Cosa Nostra. It's all mafia, Stephen, don't get me wrong. But we got the guys on the other side over there, and then we have the American mafia. And we do a lot of things to try to stay separate from that. You know, there's a lot of beautiful ceremonies that they do here when they make a guy. Some families do it in English and Italian. It's very romantic. But, you know, during the 90s and our period, during the wars, you know, it got to be a little faster and more Americanized. And so they broke it down to make it a little more simpler than the ceremonies that are being done in Italy and around the world. And again, it kind of separates us from the Italian mafia.
Did you work with the Sicilians?
I never did, no. I mean, I'm part Sicilian myself. And there were Sicilians in my neighborhood. They weren't made guys, but guys that came over. And but I'll tell you, we really tried to stay away from that. You know, to separate the two.
I asked this question because we're going to go to the racketeering and what kind of rackets you was involved in. specifically drugs, we're going to go there because I'm thinking about Carmine Galati is another one, another famous mob here in Brooklyn. He had a lot of Sicilians around him. You know, you had the pizza case, which was massive about the heroin, where the Sicilian mafia was controlling heroin distribution pretty much at that time. So there was a lot of infiltration between you guys, the US branch of the mafia, and the Sicilians. So I wondered how that related to your time as a capo.
All right, by the 90s, by the time I became a capo, you know, a lot of things had changed with that. You know, the pizza connection that came out of Sicily, they brought it to the American mafia, the Bonanno family, and all these families were earning with that. Everything was coming from the Italians on the other side. Until today, with some of the families, there may be some business left with the guys from the other side. But now, coming up in my era, we still more amongst ourselves, especially up in Boston. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, I'm Sicilian Milanese. I got family in Palermo and I got family in Italy. And a lot of my family stay together and they talk. You know, myself, I'm too Americanized. I like acting on the street, and that's the way I did business.
So let's go to how you actually made your money in the mafia and how that translates, you know, into what rackets. What were the main ways that you made money? Drugs, extortion,
the main
armed robbery.
My main source of income was drugs. Now, the drug money would finance my loan shark money and would finance my bookmaking and my gambling operations that I had. You know, before they opened up the casinos down here in Connecticut and wherever else, we used to have card clubs. You know, I used to run an Alabama game there that people could tap the bank for $20,000. It was a big money game. And so there was big money going on. There was a lot of money on the street in the 90s. There was a lot of drug money on the street in the 90s. And that's what I capitalized on the cocaine business.
And if people didn't pay you or they borrowed money from you, Bobby, what would happen to them?
A lot of them would have a problem. It depended on, see, every situation is different. If someone refused to pay me, they would have a problem, Stephen. Okay, we know what that is. Something would happen to them. But if I had a bookmaker with me that owed me a lot of money, paying me for years, got himself in a little trouble, I would put a lot of people on the shelf to help them out, get them back on their feet again. Because while they're earning, they're making me earn. If they're not earning, I'm not earning. So I was a businessman. It wasn't all violence when it came to that. The violence came when I felt my life might have been threatened or in danger. That's when the violence came. But I never really hurt too many people over money. And I have to be honest with you with that.
And you can't get blood out of a stone, you know, which leads me to another question. So was you involved in rigging the unions, tendering for contracts and dominating different industries of business?
No, well, it was the movie industry. We had the Teamsters Union in Charlestown at the time, and they were using my name in there for influence. They got what they wanted. And a lot of my friends worked in the movie industry, whether it was limousine drivers, whatever it is, they made sure that my crew got the best jobs. I never went in and shook them down for any money. I didn't have to do that. I had plenty of money. I wasn't looking for that. But I was always looking for ways for my guys to earn. So that was a good thing there, you know. As far as the construction unions, when I came up, you know, they started the big dig. And the FBI was really on the unions. And we couldn't really get it back in and infiltrate. But with my influence, I was getting people jobs and was able to do a little other things with them. But I never got back into the construction. So I didn't use my power that way. But I would use my power to stop strikes or different things. So I had influence at a point.
So give us an example of an approach in the movie industry or an area of business where you would take what you wanted, or what would that look like?
In what way, Stephen?
Give me an example. You wanted to get your guys a certain job or control a certain area or skim off the top of a certain contract. How would you approach something like that?
Well, it would all depend. If someone came to me and needed something from me, I made sure that I got something out of them, whether they had a construction company, whether they had a restaurant or whatever. You know, I mean, I didn't myself, I wasn't a big extortionist, and I didn't chase after people like that. But I wanted to make sure that my guys and myself got our fair share of whatever anybody was doing on the street. I really didn't chase down legal people, legitimate people. I really didn't chase them down. We were making so much money in other areas that it wasn't necessary for me to do that. But I did shake a lot of people down. You know, I went into some unions, and as far as I felt satisfied what I was getting out of it, I'll give you an example. I had a friend of mine. I don't know if you ever heard about Hooters, that restaurant. There's a big chain over here. And it was a non-union job, and they were doing the restaurant over, and the union came down and they picketed. And they came to me and told me, because the guy was a friend, if you know what I mean, you know, through someone else, geez, that, you know, the union's not letting me move. I can't do anything. I sent one guy down there. I sent one word, and it broke up. It was over with. So that's a power and influence that we had. But I never really pushed it because of the feds. I know if I push too much with the unions, they're going to come on me. So
you see, this is the thing. The world, the underworld is spoken just for this reason. It's that analogy. You know, people have to understand that mafia crime families, they're like another shadowy government that people go to for help, for protection, to solve problems, to do a myriad of things. What kind of things would people, as a capo, a captain, a senior member of the, main member of the mafia in your neighborhood, what kind of things would people come to you for, Bobby?
Well, a lot of people, it was help, it was protection, our business getting bothered. You know, someone's not paying them, other people getting shaken down in the neighborhood. You know, they would come to me and, you know, we would solve those problems for them. Some people came to me over family problems that I had to solve for them. You know, there's husbands beating up wives and, you know, daughters getting abused. And, you know, it was a lot of different facets that we helped the people in the neighborhood. My main thing was to help the people in the neighborhood.
Yeah, but as judge, jury, and executioner, this would include murder, right?
Whatever had to be done, Stephen. Whatever had to be done.
That's
but
very.
Was never murder for hire. I didn't like that. Many people came to me for that, and I refused them.
Tony Molino. Yeah? Let's talk about him. He was another very prominent organized crime figure at that time. And there was another war around you guys at that time. So take us through that and these relationships at that time in Boston, Massachusetts.
Well, like I said, when I met Joey, our war was calming down off here, you know, and when I went down to Philly, you know, he gained control. His war was just about over, but he was still gaining control. And we were both trying to gain control in both areas. So that's how Joey and I hooked up together. Joey Merlino is a man's man, and he's a gangster. I know Joey well at that time. I used to be around him a lot. I was one of his capos. And I got a lot of respect for Joey. And Joey set out to do what he did, and, you know, he became the boss of the Bruno Scaffo family. They say today he's still the boss. And Joe is a very serious individual. Very dangerous individual. That whole crew down there is a very dangerous. I'd say in status today compared to the other families, their alliance down there, that they might be one of the most dangerous families out there right now. Definitely not the biggest, but one of the most dangerous.
Now, I certainly know Joey Marino, his consigliere, Gino Marconi. Both of them was, you know, indicted for multiple murders. They was acquitted, right?
Yes, they were. Yes, they were.
Now, I just want to fill in a little bit for the audience here. We're talking about the lineage here goes all the way back to Angelo Bruno onto Nicky Scarfa, of course, who was you know, famous for his violence, right?
Yes.
And this is the Bruno Scarfa family that we're talking about. Just to give the information to that, so people can weave the history together. So at that time when you was a capo, things started to go wrong here. Where was the lineage and your allegiances going at this time, Bobby?
Well, my allegiance was with the Philadelphia family. I was a capo in that family. And I was determined to interfere with anything the Patriarchas were doing at the time. Because obviously I wanted the power and I wanted to be the boss up there. But the Patriarcha family was in Boston since the 50s. And I'll tell you, the Black Hand and La Cosa Nostra and the mafia really was the strongest at one point in Boston. So the mafia goes way back in Boston to the 1800s. And the Patriarcha family, which I always respected, the old man, Raymond, he died in 1985. And, you know, from then on, there was just chaos in that family, in disarray. And that gave me the strength to step up there. So everything I was gaining for myself. And I would say naturally for the Philly crew, you know. So my alliance was definitely with Philadelphia. But I grew up with all these Patriarcha guys. We were all friends. We were all working together. Even though I was with the Philadelphia crew, we were still all working together.
Now, there's some, you know, there's some images coming in here of Angelo Bruno, of course, who was murdered. Nicky Scarfa, he was indicted, and, you know, just to put some images in there. Now, I want to ask you, Bobby, another question that I know people will be asking out there, especially of a senior guy in the mafia who would be more of a target for everyone else who wants to come up. What is it actually like to live a life where death can find you at any moment and your friends will be the ones to come and kill you?
Well, what I did is I surrounded myself with family. I made my cousins and loyal guys that were around me. That was my circle. It got to a point that my guys didn't even want my friends coming and talking with me, guys that I grew up with. I was always careful after that. I knew that no matter who was left in Boston, whoever wanted to come up and be a boss there was always going to want to take me out, especially on the Patriarcha side. So at that point, I started living careful. You know, I always had bodyguards around me and people around me. Don't get me wrong, I did a lot with my family and a lot by myself, but I made sure that there was a cushion around me. Because you can never be too careful in that life, Stephen. Because there were family members and there were guys on the street that were looking to still kill me. And I knew that. You know, but I was just staying a step ahead of everybody.
Were there attempts in your life?
Oh, there were several. You know, I was even getting threats from New York. You know, they were sided in with the Patriarcha family against myself and Joey. So there was people looking to come and get me, my friend. Believe that. No one liked the move that me and Joey made. But listen, I got to tell you this. Till today, there's still a Philly crew up here in Boston. And they're still strong up here.
So, you know, you make all the safety measures, you know, to protect yourself. But, you know, behind that, knowing you're such a marked man and people are plotting your death constantly, they only need to be lucky once, right? How does that really translate to you in your quiet moments, living like that?
Well, you know, sometimes it gets to you, but I'll tell you, overall, I don't know. It's just, we had a philosophy. We used to joke about it. We were happy to make it to 40 years old. You know, we're either going to make it to 40 years old or be doing prison or life. It was going to be one or the other. And that's how we lived every day.
So you think it's never going to be you, right? You think it's never going to be you, right?
Well, you never do. You never do. You know, you do your best you can to protect yourself. And, you know, just pray your enemy's always going to be a little weaker. They're not smarter. And thank God, you know, I got picked up at 38 years old. And I made the 40 mark in prison. So I was happy, you know. And praise God, I'm still sitting here.
Yeah. Now, I know there's another question, Bobby, that many of the audience will be thinking or asking. Having watched so many movies, from The Godfather to Once Upon a Time in America to Goodfellas, Casino, all these mob stories, they're quite predictable, really, in their endings. It has to be said. And I know that people are saying, when you know these people are plotting your death and you know your time's up, why don't you get your stuff and go? Why don't you run? I mean, anyone with any that say, you know what, I'm going to move countries, I'm going to move. So how does that actually translate within the life? People like Sonny Black, he knew without a doubt with the rules that he broke. Joey Pistone, very famous case, that
right, yeah,
his life was over. You know, you can't break them rules. You're going, right. But he went to their meetings, and of course he was murdered. So what is the thing with made guys, and you're so entrenched in that life that even at the moment of certain death, that you walk towards it?
It's a part of honor. That's what it is. You know you're going to your death and you still go. I want you to think about it and go back in history. You go back to the Romans. Go back, even look at the Japanese. They wanted to die honorable deaths. And if that's the way that a main guy got to go, then that's where it has to be. If you really believed in this life to the fullest, then that's your destiny and you accept it. And I know it sounds crazy, you know, but a lot of guys, they're either doing life in prison for this life or got killed over this life. Look at up here, me and my friends, I was actually with a capo yesterday that I came up with. And I'm not going to say names, but at that time in the Patriarca family, he was my boss, you know. And we're just talking about things in the life and things that we went through. And it's just amazing the state of mind that you're in when you're in that life, Stephen. Nobody that hasn't been in that life could ever understand it. Nobody.
And this is why,
sometimes.
Yeah, and this is why I'm pushing and pulling this to offer the audience an opportunity to go behind the curtain and to know more, to grasp at an understanding of a life that they would never understand. Pretty much a life that you have to live, and you live until death. It's a very unique way to live, but there are differences here, Bob, because you're still with us and you saw through the life and you come out of the life, you know, and you wanted to go towards breaking them rules for whatever reason, because you obviously must have come to a place where you didn't believe in what was going on around you. So tell us about your transition there.
It was March of 1998. You know, I was really in the pit. I told you, really a violent person. And I had a spiritual experience. And I went one night from a diehard gangster to want to see Christ. It's a true story. I was in a room with a demon for about 8 hours, a demonic being. He showed me people that we had killed. He showed me a lot of different things. Started to see my evils. But the biggest thing I saw that night, that Jesus existed. That just talking to this thing, mentioning Jesus' name to this thing, it would keep regressing. It was amazing what I saw that night. What happens after that night, I take communion. The church comes up. My mother had a church at the time, Pastor Lewis. They gave me the communion. I accepted Christ that night. I still had to go out the next day and be a gangster, but I was starting to get disillusioned with the life now. All the treachery, the killing, the drugs, just getting disillusioned with everything. And at that time, you know, I think it was God was working on me. And 15 months later, I got picked up in 99, June of 99. And when I got picked up, it felt like a burden was off my shoulders. A yoke broke off my shoulders, Stephen. And it was one of the best days I had in 10 years during that war, was the day that they came and cuffed me. Because I felt it was over. My plan was just to go do my time, leave the mafia, and just maybe go move to Florida at that point. That's what I wanted to do in my life.
So after all the darkness, all the killing, you know, all the mayhem, you think there's redemption just like that? Explain a little bit more.
Well, it's not just like that. It doesn't happen overnight, Stephen. So what happens is I seen these things that night, and I had to seek for answers. Why did this happen to me? But it doesn't happen overnight. You know, I tell people when I used to teach, and hopefully I'll start teaching again soon. You know, up in Boston, there's a lot of apple orchards up here. A lot of people have to go apple picking up here. We got a good climate for it. But what they have to do with this, because the climate is so bad, they usually they start the seed inside a greenhouse. And they got to keep it in there for like maybe 18 months before they can actually take it out into the orchard and plant it. Because New England weather, anybody that lives here, they know how vicious it can get. So that seed has to be nourished, and it takes time. Nobody gets saved overnight, my friend. It's a process. And going to prison for 14 years was probably the best thing that happened to me. That actually turned my life around. Because believe me, that night that thing happened to me, 15 months before I got arrested and picked up, we were still on the street selling drugs, loan sharking, and doing everything else. At that point, I started to get disillusioned with everything. In that 15-month period, by the end of it, when I got picked up, I didn't even want to be a main guy anymore. I wanted out of the life. And when they picked me up, I knew that was my chance to get out. Okay,
so you've done a long time in prison as well, Bobby. You know, it has to be said. And what I'd like to say now is you are actually a pastor. You know, you've gone along on your journey of spreading your journey and your word, you know, and the word of God over you see, and your examples and your experiences behind you for the betterment of others. But let's go back a little bit there now, and we're talking about, you know, the hardship in prison, and when you've seen through that life, you know, and you see through the life, you see through the life. You know, you wanted to cooperate, you didn't, or you did, or you didn't, or whatever was going around you. But what was the people from the old life? How was it to get away from everything that you knew before? How did you actually do that?
Well, it's like anything else. You know, we believed in that life. I believed in that life. You know, we had to murder people. We had to do this. We had to do that. We hurt people. And in our way, in our society, we were good guys. I mean, this is the way that I grew up, you know. You know, you murder one person, you help another person. This is what was instilled in us. This is what we thought. We thought we were living a good life. We thought we were good guys. You know, when that happened to me that night, Stephen, I saw the truth. And that's the whole thing right there. When you know what you're doing was a lie, and you're an advocate for Satan, okay? And then all of a sudden you see that truth in front of you. How do you refute that? How do you back away from that? there really is a God. There is a Jesus. Now I have a different mindset. I'm still polluted. I'm still weighed down with iniquity and sin, but now I want to seek this. And that's what I did. And it took years.
Well,
But
it's
in the process, I'm
yeah.
sorry, go ahead, Bill.
No, I'm just saying, just the last question, and it's an unbelievable thing to live knowing that your death can be around any corner.
Yeah.
And that you believe in that life and you've sworn a blood oath to uphold that life above your own family or any sweetness or gentleness or any beauty in the world that you hold dear. This is a dark place indeed, a place where your own friends are constantly, really, whether they know it or not, within that life, positioning you for your murder and your demise so they can step up.
Yeah.
So a last question. With everything that you've learned about this fascinating and unbelievable journey that you've traveled, Bobby, what would you say now in small terms? What is the one thing, if you could sum it all up, and that you have learned about the life that you have lived, Bobby?
Well, I'll tell you, I really believe, and I'll say this in your case too, and a lot of the people that are around me now, our past made us who we are today. You know, I regret being a drug dealer. I can't tell you that I regret some of the other things that I've done, the terrible things, but I felt that was part of a life and being a soldier. But I'll tell you what I learned today is love conquers all things, my friend. It's better to be a good person than a bad person. You know, people today don't look up to guys that we used to be, Stephen. They laugh at gangsters today. People call the police on gangsters today, you know? And I learned that through this life and everything that I've been through, if you really want peace in life, if you want to enjoy your life, go get a job. Put your kids through college. Do the best you can. I don't care if you're a street sweeper, if you pick up on the garbage truck, which they get paid pretty good in Boston to do that. Whatever you do for work, whatever makes you happy, make sure at night you can go home and put your head on the pillow and not have to worry who's going to clip you or if the law is going to break your door down. That's what I learned. I learned to try to find peace because I think that's the most important thing, Stephen. If I answered your question correctly.
Bobby Luisi, thanks for inviting us into your world, into your life, into your past dark experiences as a very senior made captain of the Boston Mafia. It's been an unbelievable journey with you, and I'm sure the viewers will be fascinated with many of the things that you have said. Thanks for coming on the platform.
Thank you so much for having me here, Stephen. You know, I love being on your show. God bless you, brother, and thank you.